Now, moving on to the events at the front, Pokrovsk is the city where the fiercest fighting is currently taking place. We are all waiting for good news from there, but the situation remains tense. However, the most important thing is that there is neither a blockade of the defense forces nor a complete encirclement of the city. Our defenders are making incredible efforts to hold the largest southern agglomeration of Donetsk region, Pokrovsk, Myrnohrad. The defense of these cities depends on logistics, and the enemy understands this perfectly well. That is why they are now trying to prevent supplies and evacuations using attack drones. However, frontline drivers still manage to break through to the nearly encircled cities. See how this happens in our report from the Pokrovsk direction, and at the same time support our fundraiser for drones for the Tavria paratroopers of the 79th Brigade, who are now defending Myrnohrad. The details are on your screens.
Yes, even in rainy weather, the Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad agglomeration is ablaze. Heavy fighting is currently taking place for these cities, but explosions are also happening in the nearby rear areas. In order to disrupt the coordination and supply of our troops defending this section of the front, the Russians are using drones and glide bombs to strike everything up to 15 to 20 kilometers deep.
Wow, this happened just recently.
This is the town of Dobropillia. From here to Pokrovsk, it's just a little over 20 kilometers in a straight line. In September, the defense forces partially eliminated the threat to the settlement with counterstrikes. But the Russians have not stopped the shelling. Dobropillia, where shops, cafes, and thousands of people were still present in the summer, is now in ruins and without utilities. The local residents who still remain here are disoriented. After all, everything happened extremely quickly. Last night,
at night and in it, and Shaheds, loud, very loud. From there, everything is usual. So maybe you're thinking about leaving? For now, we'll stay here, and then if something happens, we'll see.
The hellish whirlwind of shelling here does not stop, and the greatest threat comes from enemy attack drones. The Russians are trying to take control of all possible routes of movement in the frontline zone. Any vehicle, civilian or military, is a potential target for them. On the frontline roads, it's not just armor that saves you, but rather speed and the driver's remarkable skill. We're lucky our driver is truly top-notch, always alert and highly skilled. Skilled drivers are the backbone and hope for the defenders of the Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad agglomeration. According to the Deep State map, the cities are already almost operationally encircled. Its bottleneck, just over 2 kilometers wide, is controlled by enemy strike drones. To rotate troops, deliver ammunition and supplies to the soldiers, drivers have to travel almost right under the Russians' noses.
He's running across. The second and the third.
Let him check the vehicle, report back to me on whether it's damaged or not, if there was any action taken on it, because they haven't reported anything.
At one of the command posts of the 79th Air Assault Brigade, Volodymyr monitors the situation in Myrnohrad and organizes logistics for the defenders. Because the enemy regularly infiltrates the urban area, the supply routes have to be constantly changed. The autumn fogs and rains help a lot with this.
You just need to find the right moment, and that's it. Just going now, for example, isn't an option. You heard it yourself where it's flying. We wait patiently and carefully for the right weather, and then we go.
Well, it's risky.
Yeah, it's risky every time, but, well, there's a better chance that nothing will happen.
In these shots, under the cover of fog, an American M113 breaks through to the paratroopers in Myrnohrad to evacuate the wounded. The guys carry out such risky missions almost every day. For this, the armored vehicle was reinforced with additional protective elements. But even that is sometimes powerless, the drivers say.
Oh, not really. It's thinning out, or maybe it's just worn out. It's gotten warmer, so why are my feet so hot? There are 2 tires here, both burned through. And here the frame is also burned through. Why do we do it? It's very hard, but we have to, because we need to evacuate the wounded guys. We have to pick up the groups coming out, deliver drones and supplies to the guys, everything. So whether we want to or not, we have to do it.
We have to, because we need to hold this direction. Before winter, urban areas are important for the Russians. The enemy doesn't want to spend the winter in open fields, so the assaults on Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk don't stop for a single day. Despite massive losses, Russian infantry keeps trying to break through and gain a foothold in the urban areas.
For them, taking the city is, in my opinion, even an operational strategic objective, because they themselves understand that if they get into a populated area or a city, then after that it will be very difficult to drive them out of there.
Moreover, if the Russians manage to occupy the Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad agglomeration, it will allow them to continue their advance into the Dnipropetrovsk region. From Pokrovsk to Pavlohrad, there are only 80 kilometers of open steppe. Stanislav Kukarchuk, Vyacheslav Romodan, Oleg Kukarsky. Details on the Intermarathon TV channel. United News.
Partisans are becoming more active in the territory of the aggressor country. The resistance movement Freedom of Russia has carried out a series of successful operations. The insurgents have been actively operating since the beginning of the full-scale invasion and are currently one of the largest resistance movements on the territory of the Russian Federation, according to the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine. Right now, the partisans are targeting locomotives that the enemy uses to supply weapons and ammunition to the front lines. The Freedom of Russia incendiary cocktails burn out the control systems of railway engines. This complicates the transportation of military cargo. The number of damaged locomotives is already in the dozens, according to the main intelligence directorate. In Russia, things are burning and exploding almost every day. The occupying army is suffering from supply and logistics problems after successful operations by Ukrainian special services deep inside the aggressor country. What is striking is not only the number of strikes, but also the geography of the targets and their scale. So, how many energy facilities and oil refineries have the defense forces struck over the past week? And most importantly, what kind of damage have they inflicted on Russia's economy and military complex? My colleagues have prepared an informational briefing.
On the evening of October 27th, a powerful explosion occurred at the Sakhalin Grease 2 power plant. This is not just an ordinary facility, but one of the key power stations in the Far East. The moment of the explosion was captured by a car dash cam. Immediately, the region began experiencing disruptions in industry, transportation, and public utilities, and in several districts, water disappeared. After all, the 120-megawatt power plant supplies electricity to a third of the region. By the way, the distance from Sakhalin Island to the nearest points of Ukraine's eastern border is approximately 8,000 kilometers. The following day, October 29th, turned out to be extremely productive for the Ukrainian military. On that day alone, the defense forces struck 3 strategic targets in 3 different regions of Russia. Among the targets hit was the Novospassky oil refinery in the Ulyanovsk region. According to media reports, after encountering Ukrainian long-range strike capabilities, the facility ceased operations. As a result, the Russians lost the ability to process 600,000 tons of crude oil per year. That's 750 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. On the same day, a strike also hit the Mari oil refinery in the Republic of Mari El. This plant is one of the key fuel producers for Russia's central regions. According to various sources, it was capable of processing more than 1.5 million tons of crude oil per year. To hit it, the drones had to fly approximately 1,000 kilometers. The third major target on October 29th was the gas processing plant in Budyonovsk, located in the Stavropol Krai. The facility belongs to the company Lukoil and plays an important role in gas processing and chemical production. At the end of last month, the Russian energy system once again came under attack from Ukrainian long-range weaponry. The Navy reported that on that day, a Neptune missile struck the thermal power plant in the city of Orel. The facility supplies power to industry and provides electricity to the population. Among other things, the thermal power plant supplied regional enterprises of Russia's military-industrial complex. Its capacity was 330 megawatts. And to hit it, you need to cover approximately 160 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Besides the thermal power plant, the main explosive event of the day was the attack on one of the largest oil refineries in the city of Yaroslavl, which specializes in fuel production. The annual processing capacity is about 15 million tons of crude oil per year. However, there is currently no information in open sources about how much the impact on the plant has affected production. A short pause and then more striking events. On the night of November 5th, explosions occurred simultaneously in 2 Russian regions, Vladimir and Oriol oblasts. In Oriol, the strike once again targeted the thermal power plant, while in Vladimir region, it hit one of the largest oil refineries in southern Russia, Lukoil Volgograd Nefte Pererabotka. This enterprise is a giant, capable of processing, according to various sources, up to 16 million tons of oil per year, which is considerable. It accounts for 9.5% of all oil refining in the Russian Federation and is a key fuel supplier for the southern region.
Ukraine is imposing sanctions against Russian entities engaged in resource extraction in the Arctic. This was announced by President Volodymyr Zelensky. According to him, partner countries will continue to implement restrictive measures. They will take Ukraine's proposals into account in their sanctions packages. In addition, partner sanctions will be synchronized within Ukrainian jurisdiction. And starting today, the 19th package of EU sanctions against Russia comes into effect in Ukraine. The president described the restrictions as strong. It is expected that they will inflict losses on the aggressor amounting to at least tens of billions of euros annually. Somehow, European sanctions restrictions have not affected certain firms. These are companies involved in the production of the Russian Orion drone, which is capable of conducting reconnaissance and patrol missions within a radius of up to 250 kilometers at an altitude of 7,000 meters. Moreover, this drone can carry out missile and bomb strikes. The main intelligence directorate has published a diagram of the enemy drone and information about the enterprises involved in its production. According to intelligence, more than a dozen of them have not been subjected to sanctions. Mikhailo Manalyuk will provide more details.
It is called the Bayraktar killer.
The Russian Orion strike reconnaissance drone hunts Ukrainian unmanned boats. What threat does it pose to the armed forces of Ukraine? What kind of danger does such an aerial target present? And why are sanctions still not applied to this enemy drone?
Most of the affiliated companies that supply certain components, such as cameras, electronics, and other parts, are not under any sanctions. And this is the main problem.
The Orion is produced by the sanctioned Russian group of companies, Kronstadt. The device, weighing almost a ton, is capable of carrying up to 250 kilograms of payload. This includes systems for aerial photography, radio intelligence modules, optical electronics, Kh-50 missile warheads, UAVs, and much more.
This is a large drone that is capable of carrying certain advanced devices and specialized equipment for delivering highly precise airstrikes, such as missiles that are either remotely controlled or laser guided. So, from a security standpoint, this particular equipment is truly dangerous. It can significantly impact the front line, and it has the potential to destroy Ukrainian defenses, equipment, and personnel. So, its presence on the battlefield represents a serious threat.
It can operate at an altitude of about 7,000 meters, staying in the airspace for 24 hours, so we understand that in reality, this is a problem.
In addition, the Orion is a carrier of the new Russian cruise missile Banderol. With a relay, it can strike targets at a distance of up to 300 kilometers. The main intelligence directorate has found that 43 Russian companies supply components for the production of this drone, and they purchase them abroad. And a third of these firms are still not under sanctions.
This is actually an instruction, a call to action to further expand the sanctions packages, add even more companies to the list of those who support terrorist regimes and are sponsors of terrorism. Sanctions work. Are they working effectively, and can they be made more effective? That's always the case, because this is ongoing work that needs to be done every day to identify supply channels for various components and restrict them.
Russia can transfer technologies and components for the production of the Orion to its allies, Iran or North Korea. Therefore, this aerial vehicle poses a threat, not only to Ukraine, but also to Europe. Intelligence officers are calling for economic strikes against enterprises that supply servos and parts to the Russian military-industrial complex, as well as to synchronize effective sanctions and monitor their enforcement.
It's not right to say that all is lost. It's simply a huge amount of work. We're being honest here. We need to constantly work to ensure that both companies and their affiliates cannot cooperate with the aggressor country. As of now, and with the level of resistance demonstrated by the armed forces of Ukraine, Orion-class drones are not effective. They remain dangerous, they continue to pose a threat, but in any case, they are not something ultimate.
The best sanctions are means of counteraction. In September, Ukraine's unmanned systems forces destroyed another Russian Orion. The cost of such a device exceeds $5 million. The General Staff does not specify on which particular front line the enemy UAVs were shot down. Experts suggest that Ukrainian interceptor drones were used to strike the target.
This tool is very well designed for radar systems. Some interception elements can be used. Our interceptor drones can also work against such a target. So basically, you just need to detect and intercept them. Because essentially, this is one of the Russian eyes that helps, for example, the Russians to target and strike our facilities.
Drones of this class are vulnerable. They are large and relatively unwieldy. Even though their range is claimed to be large, in reality it is within reach of Ukraine's air defense. Even though Russia claims that the equipment is locally produced on the territory of Muscovy, some experts assert that inside there is a huge list of various systems to which Russia has no connection whatsoever.
Experts note that the Russian army has only a few dozen Orions. 4 years ago, they planned to deliver 20 units to the military. And it is unlikely that the Russian Federation has managed to establish serial production of these UAVs. And even if they have, the armed forces of Ukraine have the means to destroy them. And perhaps in some 50th EU sanctions package, the companies that still supply components for the production of Russian Orions will finally be banned. Mikhailo Manilyuk, Alexander Krulikov. Details on the Intermarathon TV channel.